Marcus Webb wiped the sweat from his forehead as he carried the last cargo container across the loading bay. His muscles ached, and his back screamed for rest. The twin suns of New Terra were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Another 12-hour shift done. Another day of barely making enough credits to keep food on the table. He pulled out his lunchbox and sat on the edge of the platform, his legs dangling over the side. Inside the box was half a sandwich he'd saved from lunch and an apple. It wasn't much, but it would have to do for dinner. Marcus couldn't afford to eat at the colony's food stations anymore. Not since Sarah died. Not since he became the only parent to 8-year-old Lily. The spaceport was quieter now. Most workers had gone home. Ships hummed in the distance, their engines cooling after long journeys across the stars. New Terra was a frontier colony, a place where dozens of alien species came to trade and live. Humans were just one species among many here, and not always the most respected one. Marcus bit into his sandwich and stared at the distant city lights. He thought about Lily, probably doing homework at their neighbor's apartment right now. Mrs. Chen watched her every evening while Marcus worked late. He hated being away from his daughter so much, but there was no choice. The bills didn't pay themselves. A sound caught his attention, a soft clicking noise like stones tapping together. Marcus turned his head and saw movement near the dumpsters behind the loading bay. Two small figures crouched in the shadows, their bodies pressed against the metal containers. Marcus squinted in the fading light. They were children, he realized. Young ones. But they weren't human. Their bodies were covered in a hard shell that gleamed dully in the twilight. They had multiple arms, thin and delicate, and their heads were crowned with short antennae. Velcori, he thought, the insect-like species that most people avoided. The children watched him with large, multifaceted eyes. They didn't move, just stared at his sandwich with an intensity that made Marcus's chest tighten. He'd seen that look before, in pictures from Earth's history books. It was the look of hunger. Real, deep hunger. Marcus lowered his sandwich slowly. The children flinched, as if expecting him to throw something at them. But he didn't move toward them. He just waited. After a long moment, one of the children stepped forward. Its shell was cracked in places, and Marcus could see it trembling. The child's mouth parts moved awkwardly, struggling to form words in Standard, the common language of the colony. "Humans, sir," the child said, its voice clicking and soft. Can we eat your leftovers?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. These children were so hungry they were begging for his scraps. Not food, not a meal, just leftovers. Whatever he didn't want. Marcus looked down at his sandwich. It was barely enough for him, and his own stomach growled with hunger. But these kids looked like they hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. He made a decision. "Come here," Marcus said gently, patting the platform beside him. "Sit with me." The children looked at each other, their antennae twitching with uncertainty. Slowly, they crept forward. They moved carefully, as if expecting a trap. When they reached the platform, they climbed up with surprising grace, their multiple arms making the task easy. Marcus broke his sandwich in half, then broke those halves in half again. He handed 2 pieces to the children. "Here, not leftovers. This is dinner. We'll share." The children stared at the food in their hands like it was treasure. Then they looked at Marcus, their eyes wide. "You share?" one of them asked. "With us?" "Of course," Marcus said. He took out the apple and used his pocket knife to cut it into slices. "What are your names?" The children ate slowly, savoring every bite. Between mouthfuls, they answered. "I am Zik," said the one who had spoken first. "This is my sister, Zara. We are twins." "I'm Marcus," he said. "Where are your parents?" Zara's antennae drooped. "Gone. They died in transport crash 6 months ago. We have no one." Marcus felt his heart break a little. You've been alone for 6 months? Where have you been staying? Here, there, anywhere we can hide, Zik said. He clicked softly, a sound Marcus didn't understand. Other species do not help Velcori children. They say we are low caste. We are bugs. We are not important. Marcus had heard the slurs before. On New Terra, not all species were treated equally. Humans had their own struggles, but at least they had each other. These kids had no one. That's wrong, Marcus said firmly. You're not bugs, you're kids. And kids matter. All kids matter. Zara tilted her head, studying Marcus with her strange eyes. Why do you help us? We are not your species. We are not your family. Marcus thought about that for a moment. Why was he helping them? He could barely feed himself and Lily. He had his own problems. But when he looked at these two frightened, starving children, he knew the answer was simple. Because you needed help, he said. And I could give it. That's enough reason. The twins finished eating, and Marcus could see they were still hungry. He wished he had more food to give them. Listen, he said. I'll come back tomorrow. Same time. I'll bring more food, real food. Can you meet me here? Zik and Zara looked at each other, their antennae touching briefly. Some kind of communication passed between them. Then they looked back at Marcus and nodded together. We will be here, Marcus, sir, Zik said. Just Marcus, he corrected gently. No sir needed. As Marcus walked away from the spaceport that night, his stomach empty and his body tired, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Those kids needed him. And somehow, he needed them too. He didn't know it yet, but that simple question, can we eat your leftovers, would change not just his life, but the entire colony. Tomorrow, he decided he would pack extra food. He would find a way, because that's what humans did. They found a way to help, even when it seemed impossible, especially then. Marcus looked up at the stars above New Terra and made a silent promise. Those kids wouldn't spend another night wondering where their next meal would come from. Not if he could help it, not while he was still breathing. Marcus kept his promise. The next day he packed twice as much food in his lunchbox. A full sandwich for himself, one for the twins to share, 2 apples, and a bag of dried fruit he'd bought with credits he'd been saving for new work boots. His boots could wait. When his break came, he found Zik and Zara waiting by the dumpsters. They looked cleaner than yesterday, like they'd found water somewhere to wash themselves. They practically vibrated with excitement when they saw him approach. You came back, Zara said, her clicking voice filled with wonder. I said I would, Marcus replied, sitting down and opening his lunchbox. I always keep my promises. This became their routine. Every day, Marcus brought food. Every day, he sat with the twins during his break. They talked about everything and nothing. Marcus taught them better standard, helping them with words they struggled to pronounce. The twins taught him basic Velcori clicks, laughing when he got the rhythms wrong. Marcus learned that Velcori children were incredibly smart. Zik could do complex math in his head faster than Marcus could type it into a calculator. Zara remembered everything she heard, word for word, like her brain was a recording device. These weren't just hungry kids on the street. They were brilliant minds being wasted. After a week, Marcus came home and found Lily waiting for him at the door. His daughter crossed her arms and gave him the serious look she'd inherited from her mother. Dad, you're coming home hungry, Lily said. Mrs. Chen says you're losing weight. What's going on? Marcus couldn't lie to his daughter. He never had. So he told her about Zik and Zara. He explained how they had no one, how they were starving, how he'd been sharing his lunch with them. Lily listened quietly. Then she went to the kitchen and started pulling out food from their small pantry. Tomorrow I'm packing lunch, she announced. We'll make extra. They need it more than we do right now. Lily, we can't, Marcus started. Yes, we can, his daughter said firmly. Mom always said we should help people who need it. She wouldn't want us to walk past hungry kids. She just wouldn't." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. His 8-year-old daughter had more wisdom than most adults. "Okay," he said. "We'll do it together." The next day, Marcus brought a feast by their standards. Sandwiches, fruit, and cookies that Lily had insisted on baking the night before. When Zik and Zara saw the food, they made a soft, trilling sound that Marcus had learned meant happiness in Velcori. "Your offspring helped make this?" Zik asked, touching one of the cookies reverently. "My daughter Lily," Marcus said proudly. "She wanted you to have something special." Zara's antennae drooped in what Marcus now recognized as emotion. "We have never met offspring of another species who cared about us. She is kind, like you." But not everyone saw it that way. By the second week, other workers at the spaceport started noticing Marcus's routine. They saw him sitting with the Velcori twins, sharing food, talking, and laughing. Whispers started spreading through the loading bay. "Did you hear? Webb is feeding those street bugs. What a waste. Those things breed like crazy anyway. There's always more of them. My cousin tried to help a Velcori once. They stole from him. You can't trust them." Marcus ignored the comments. He'd learned long ago that people feared what they didn't understand. But the whispers grew louder. They reached his supervisor, a stern Rigelian named Korth, who valued efficiency above all else. Korth called Marcus into his office one afternoon. His scaled face showed no emotion, but his voice was sharp. "Webb, I've received complaints. You're spending your break time with vagrant juveniles. This reflects poorly on the company." "They're just kids who need help," Marcus said calmly. "They are not your concern," Korth replied. "Focus on your work. There are proper channels for dealing with homeless aliens. Let the authorities handle it." Marcus wanted to argue that the authorities did nothing, that those proper channels had left 2 children to starve, but he needed this job. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. He didn't stop, though. He just became more careful, meeting Zeke and Zara in less visible spots. The twins were learning quickly. Marcus started teaching them basic skills during their lunch meetings. How to use tools, how to read shipping labels, how to stay safe around heavy machinery. The twins absorbed everything like sponges. "You could work here someday," Marcus told them. "You're both smart enough. Smarter than most of the crew, honestly." "No one would hire Velcori," Zik said matter-of-factly. "We are the species others step on." "Not all of us think that way," Marcus insisted. "Things can change." But change was harder than Marcus hoped. His landlord, a greedy Centaurian named Velix, heard about Marcus's charity work through the colony's gossip network. The next week, Velix raised Marcus's rent by 20%. "The colony is growing," Velix said with an oily smile. "Prices are going up everywhere. You understand?" Marcus understood perfectly. This was punishment for helping the wrong people. But he had no choice. He couldn't risk being evicted with Lily to care for. He'd have to work more overtime, sleep less, stretch their budget even thinner. That night, Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, staring at bills he couldn't pay. Lily was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the ventilation system. He was exhausted, hungry, and running out of options. He could stop helping Zik and Zara. That would solve everything. His supervisor would be happy. His rent might go back down. He could focus on just his own family. But every time he thought about abandoning the twins, he saw their faces. He remembered how they'd asked for leftovers, not food, how they'd been so grateful for simple kindness, how they'd looked at him like he was the first person to see them as something other than bugs. Marcus looked at a photo on the wall. It was Sarah, his late wife, holding newborn Lily. Sarah had always said that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their ability to care for others, even when it cost them something. "What would you do?" Marcus whispered to the photo. He already knew the answer. Sarah would help. She would find a way, no matter how hard it was. Marcus made his decision. He wouldn't abandon Zik and Zara. He couldn't. They were counting on him. Maybe the first person who'd ever been reliable in their young lives. If that made his life harder, so be it. The next morning, Marcus went to work early. He requested every overtime shift available for the next month. He'd sleep less, work harder, push himself to the limit. But those kids would eat. They would be safe. They would know that someone cared. As Marcus loaded cargo containers that day, his supervisor approached him with a cold stare. "Webb, I'm warning you. If I catch you loitering with those creatures during work hours again, you're fired. We have standards to maintain." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. But inside, he was making plans. He couldn't meet the twins during work anymore. Fine. He'd meet them before work, after work, whenever it took. Because humans didn't give up on family. And somehow, without quite knowing when it happened, Zik and Zara had become his family too. Marcus stood outside the colony administration building, staring up at its gleaming walls. He'd been awake for 22 hours straight, working a double shift, and then rehearsing what he was about to say. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion and determination. This was crazy. He knew it was crazy. But he was done watching Zik and Zara sleep behind dumpsters. He was done sneaking them food like they were criminals for being hungry. There had to be another way. He walked through the sliding doors and approached the reception desk. A bored-looking Andorian clerk glanced up at him. "I need to speak with Administrator Velix," Marcus said, "about initiating cross-species foster procedures." The clerk's 3 eyes widened. "Cross-species? You mean adoption?" "Foster care, initially," Marcus clarified. "For 2 Velcori juveniles." The clerk stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Sir, I don't think... Let me check if the administrator is available." 10 minutes later, Marcus sat in Administrator Velix's office. Velix was a Centaurian with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to calculate the cost of everything. He leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with obvious confusion. "Let me understand this correctly, Mr. Webb," Velix said slowly. "You want to become the legal guardian of 2 Velcori children, street orphans if my information is correct?" "Yes," Marcus said firmly. "Their names are Zik and Zara. They've been alone for 6 months. No one else is helping them." "Because there are proper facilities for orphaned aliens," Velix replied. "The Galactic Orphan Relocation Program handles such cases. Why would you, a single human father struggling financially, want to take on 2 more dependents?" Marcus had expected this question. He'd thought about it during his sleepless night. The answer was simple, even if others didn't understand it. "Because they're kids," Marcus said. "Because they're scared and hungry and alone. Because I have the ability to help them, so I should. That's how humans think. That's how I think." Velix tapped his long fingers on the desk. "Mr. Webb, do you understand the complexity of what you're asking? Cross-species guardianship involves mountains of paperwork, compatibility studies, environmental assessments, psychological evaluations, cultural sensitivity training. The process takes months, sometimes years, and the cost—" "How much?" Marcus interrupted. Velix pulled up a screen and scrolled through data. "Filing fees, legal representation, mandatory home modifications for Velcori environmental needs, evaluation costs, approximately 8,000 credits, possibly more." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He made 12,000 credits a year. 8,000 was impossible, but he kept his face neutral. "What do I need to do to start the process?" "Are you serious?" Velix asked, genuine surprise in his voice. Mr. Webb, I must inform you that in the 17 years this colony has existed, no human has ever requested cross-species guardianship. In fact, very few beings of any species attempt it. The cultural barriers alone— I'm serious, Marcus said. Tell me what forms I need to fill out. Velix studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed and began typing. Very well, I'll send the initial application to your comm unit. But I warn you, Mr. Webb, the approval rate for cases like this is extremely low. The Galactic Family Services will scrutinize every aspect of your life. They'll look for any reason to deny your request. Then I'll make sure they can't find one, Marcus replied. That night, Marcus sat with Lily and explained what he was trying to do. His daughter listened carefully, her young face serious. We'd have siblings? Lily asked. Zeke and Zara would live with us? If I can make it happen, Marcus said. But it won't be easy. We'll have even less money. Our apartment will be more crowded, and some people won't like it. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, that bright smile that reminded Marcus so much of Sarah. Mom would like them. I know she would, and I want them to be safe. I want them to be family. Marcus hugged his daughter tight. Then we'll make it work. Together. The next morning, Marcus told Zik and Zara what he was attempting. The twins were sitting behind the loading bay, eating the breakfast Marcus had brought them. When he explained about the foster process, they froze. You want to be our guardian? Zik asked, his voice clicking with disbelief. Officially? Yes, Marcus said simply. Zara's antennae drooped, and Marcus realized she was crying. Valkyrie didn't have tears, but they had their own ways of showing emotion. Why would you do this? You barely have resources for yourself and your offspring. We will be burden. You're not a burden, Marcus said firmly. You're kids who deserve a home, a real home, and I'm going to make sure you get one. The process began. Marcus filled out form after form on his battered comm unit late at night. He worked every overtime hour available, pushing himself to exhaustion to save money for the fees. He slept 4 hours a night if he was lucky. Word spread through the colony about what Marcus was trying to do. Most reactions were negative. His co-workers thought he was insane. His neighbors whispered that he was neglecting Lily to focus on aliens. Even other humans questioned his judgment. Those bugs will just steal from you, one human dock worker told him. My uncle tried to help a Valkyrie once. You know what happened? They robbed him blind. Marcus bit back anger. Zik and Zara aren't thieves. They're children. But some people surprised him. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who watched Lily, started bringing food to Marcus's apartment. For the twins, she said. When they move in, they'll need to eat well. A human legal clerk named Tom offered to help with the paperwork for free. What you're doing is right, Tom said. Someone should help those kids. Slowly, quietly, a small group of humans in the colony began supporting Marcus. They held a fundraiser at the local community center. They donated credits, food, supplies. It wasn't enough to cover all the costs, but it helped. It showed Marcus he wasn't alone. Then, 3 weeks into the process, something unexpected happened. Marcus received a message on his comm unit from an unknown sender. It requested a meeting at a small cafe in the Valkyrie district, a part of the colony Marcus had never visited. He arrived at the address and found himself in a dimly lit space that smelled of strange spices. Valkyrie of all ages sat at tables, speaking in their clicking language. Marcus felt out of place, the only human in sight. An elderly Valkyrie approached him. Her shell was dark with age, and she moved with the careful grace of someone who had lived a long time. She gestured to a table, and Marcus sat. I am Matriarch Thesix, she said in perfect standard. I have heard about your efforts to guardian Zik and Zara. This interests me greatly. Why? Marcus asked cautiously. Thesix leaned forward, her many eyes studying him intently. Because those twins are not ordinary street orphans, human. They are descended from the House of Thessex. My house. Their parents were reformers, working to change how Velcori are treated in galactic society. They were killed for their efforts, though the authorities called it an accident. Marcus felt shock roll through him. They're nobles. They are my great-grandchildren, Thessex said quietly. When their parents died, I searched for them, but they had already disappeared into the colony's underbelly. I thought them lost forever. Then I heard stories of a human feeding Velcori children, sitting with them, teaching them, and I wondered, why didn't you take them in? Marcus asked. Your family. I am old and live in Velcori space, far from here, Thessex said. By the time I learned they survived, they were already bonded to you, and so I watched. I needed to see if this human's compassion was real or if it was... She paused, searching for words. Temporary enthusiasm. It's real, Marcus said firmly. I'm not going to abandon them. Thessex made a soft clicking sound that might have been approval. Humans are known for passion, but also for losing interest when difficulties arise. But you have proven consistent. For this, I will help you. I will provide documentation of the twins' lineage. I will speak to the authorities, and I will contribute to the costs of guardianship. I don't want your money, Marcus said immediately. I just want them safe. That, Thessex said, is why you will succeed. You want nothing for yourself, only for them. This is rare in the galaxy, human. Treasure it. As Marcus left the cafe, he felt hope for the first time in weeks. With Thessex's help, maybe this impossible dream could become reality. Maybe 2 orphaned kids could finally have a home. Maybe one human's stubborn refusal to give up could actually change something. Everything was going well. Too well, Marcus thought. He should have known something would go wrong. It was 3 months into the process. Marcus had completed all the required forms. His apartment had been modified with humidity controls for Velcori comfort, paid for partly by matriarch Thessex and partly by the human community's fundraising. Zeke and Zara had been attending school, their brilliant minds finally getting the education they deserved. The Colony Council was scheduled to approve the fostering arrangement next week. Then the inspector arrived. Krell was an Arconian, a species known for their rigid devotion to rules and regulations. He was tall, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that showed no warmth. He arrived at Marcus's apartment unannounced one morning, his official badge gleaming. I am Inspector Krell from Galactic Family Services, he announced. I'm here to conduct the mandatory evaluation of this dwelling and your suitability as a cross-species guardian. Marcus had known an evaluation was coming, but he'd hoped for someone more flexible. Krell looked like he'd never bent a rule in his life. The inspection was brutal. Krell measured every room, noted every flaw. The apartment was too small. The humidity controls were adequate, but not ideal. The refrigeration unit stored both human and Velcori food, which Krell deemed potentially confusing for the juveniles. Marcus's work schedule showed too many hours away from home. His income was barely above poverty level. Krell interviewed Lily, asking her uncomfortable questions about whether she felt neglected. He observed Zik and Zara at school, noting that they struggled with social integration due to their species differences. He reviewed Marcus's financial records, medical history, and even his late wife's death certificate. After a week of investigation, Krell delivered his preliminary report to the Colony Council. Marcus wasn't supposed to see it, but Tom the legal clerk slipped him a copy. Marcus read it in his apartment, his hands shaking. The report recommended denial. In cold, clinical language, Krell argued that Marcus was financially unstable, emotionally compromised by grief, and fundamentally unsuited for cross-species guardianship. He suggested the twins be placed in a Velcori institutional facility on a neighboring world. An institution? Marcus whispered. He thought of Zik and Zara locked away in some sterile building, just numbers in a system. After everything, after months of fighting, it might all end here. That night, Marcus barely slept. He knew a formal hearing would be held in 3 days. The Colony Council would vote based on Krell's recommendation, and councils always sided with official inspectors. Lily found him sitting at the kitchen table at dawn, staring at nothing. "Dad," she said softly, "are we going to lose?" Marcus looked at his daughter. He wanted to lie, to say everything would be fine. But he'd never lied to her before. "I don't know, sweetheart. It doesn't look good." "Then we have to fight harder," Lily said with the fierce determination only a child can muster. "We can't give up. Zik and Zara need us." The hearing was held in the Colony Council chambers, a large room with seats arranged in a semicircle. 5 council members sat at an elevated desk, representing different species. Administrator Velix was there, his face neutral. Krell sat to one side, his report displayed on screens for everyone to see. Marcus sat at a small table with Tom beside him. Behind him in the gallery sat a small group of supporters. Mrs. Chen, some co-workers from the spaceport, a few humans from the fundraiser. Matriarch Thesix had sent a representative, a younger Velkori named Kix. Zik, Zara, and Lily sat in the front row, holding hands. Krell presented his findings first. He spoke for 20 minutes, listing every reason Marcus was unsuitable. The apartment was too small. Marcus worked too much. The cultural differences between humans and Velkori were too significant. Cross-species bonding could cause psychological damage to the children. The humans' intentions may be admirable, Krell concluded, but intentions are not enough. These juveniles require proper care in an appropriate setting with members of their own species. I recommend immediate placement in the Velkori Youth Development Center on Proxima Station. The council members nodded. It seemed like a done deal. Then it was Marcus's turn to speak. He stood slowly, his tired body protesting. He looked at the council members, then at Krell, then at the twins sitting behind him. Zik and Zara watched him with their large eyes, full of hope and fear. Marcus didn't have a prepared speech. He'd thrown away his notes last night, realizing that fancy words wouldn't change anything. So he just spoke from his heart. "I'm not going to argue with Inspector Krell's data," Marcus began. "My apartment is small. I do work long hours. I don't make much money. Those are facts. But there are other facts he didn't put in his report." Marcus pointed to Zik and Zara. 6 months ago, these kids were starving. They were sleeping behind dumpsters. They were so hungry they asked me if they could eat my leftovers. Not food, leftovers. That's how low they'd been pushed. And you know why? Because everyone looked at them and saw bugs, problems, things to be dealt with by systems and institutions. His voice grew stronger. But I looked at them and saw kids, just kids who needed someone to care. And yeah, maybe my home isn't perfect. Maybe I work too much and don't have enough money. But I show up. Every single day I show up for them. I teach them. I protect them. I make sure they know they matter. Marcus looked directly at Krell. "You talk about psychological damage from cross-species bonding. But what about the damage from growing up in an institution? From being a number instead of a name? From never knowing what it feels like to have someone choose you, to want you, not because of duty, but because they care?" He turned back to the council. "My late wife used to say that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about being there when things get hard. It's about love. And I love those kids. My daughter loves them. They're already part of our family. The only question is whether you'll let us make it official." Marcus sat down, his heart pounding. He'd said everything he could, but the hearing wasn't over. The council called Zik and Zara to testify. The twins walked to the front together, their shells gleaming under the lights. They stood before the council, small and vulnerable. "Do you wish to stay with Marcus Webb?" one council member asked. Zik spoke first, his standard now nearly perfect. "Marcus found us when we were dying. He didn't have to help. We are not his species. We cannot benefit him. But he helped anyway. He taught us we have value. Before him, we thought we were just bugs, like everyone said. Now we know we are people. Zara continued, her voice soft but clear. In Velkori culture, we have a saying, family is made by choice, not by birth. Marcus chose us. Every day he chooses us. He is tired and poor and struggles, but he never stops choosing us. That is what family means. Lily stood up in the gallery without being called. They're my brother and sister, she announced, her young voice ringing through the chambers. They help me with homework. They tell me stories about the stars. They make me laugh, and they remind me of Mom because helping them is what she would have wanted. We're already a family. We just need you to see it. The council members looked uncomfortable. Even Krell shifted in his seat. Then something unexpected happened. The doors to the chamber burst open. People streamed in, dozens of them, workers from the spaceport in their dirty uniforms, teachers from the school, shop owners from the market. Human and alien alike, they filled the gallery. Mrs. Chen stood. I watch these children every day. I see how they've grown, how they've changed from scared, starving things into happy, confident kids. That's because of Marcus. One of Marcus's co-workers stood. Marcus is the best man I know. He works harder than anyone. And if he says he can care for these kids, then he can. Humans don't quit. We don't give up. That's what makes us special. More people stood, one after another, testifying to what they'd witnessed. The teacher talked about Zik and Zara's academic achievements. A shop owner described how the twins had helped organize donations for other homeless children. Even Marcus's supervisor, Stern Korth, stood reluctantly. Webb is a stubborn human, Korth said. But he's reliable. If he commits to something, he sees it through. I believe he'll care for these juveniles properly. Matriarch Thessix's representative, Kix, spoke last. The matriarch has authorized me to say this. Marcus Webb has shown more honor to the House of Thessix than many Velkori. He has protected our blood when we could not. In Velkori tradition, this makes him honorary family. We support his guardianship completely. The chamber was silent. The council members looked at each other. Even Krell seemed uncertain now. The head council member, an elderly Centaurian, spoke. We will vote. All in favor of approving Marcus Webb's foster application? 4 hands rose. Only 1 abstained. Marcus felt the world tilt. Had he heard correctly? The motion passes, the head council member announced. Marcus Webb is hereby approved as the legal foster guardian of Zeke and Zara of House Thessix, pending a 1-year review period. Congratulations, Mr. Webb. The gallery erupted in cheers. Marcus stood there, stunned, as Zeke and Zara ran to him. Lily joined them, and suddenly Marcus was surrounded by his children. All 3 of them, his family. He was crying, he realized. So was Lily. The twins were making their trilling sound of joy, their antennae waving wildly. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd actually done it. The night after the hearing, Marcus's small apartment was more crowded than ever. Zik and Zara officially moved in, bringing with them the few possessions they'd managed to keep over the months on the streets. It wasn't much, just some worn blankets and a small data pad with pictures of their deceased parents. Marcus set up sleeping mats in the living room for the twins. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe and warm and theirs. That first night, he checked on all 3 children before going to bed himself. Lily was fast asleep, a smile on her face. Zik and Zara were curled together on their mats, their antennae touching gently. As Marcus watched them sleep, he felt a peace he hadn't known since Sarah died. His family was whole again, different than before, unexpected, but complete. The next morning, the colony woke up to news of the adoption. The media had been at the hearing, and now the story was everywhere. Human single father breaks barriers, read one headline. Cross-species family approved in historic decision, read another. Marcus tried to ignore the attention. He had work to do and kids to raise. But the story spread beyond New Terra. By the end of the week, it had reached the galactic news networks. By the end of the month, people across dozens of worlds knew about the human who'd adopted alien children. The attention brought changes, both good and bad. Some people sent messages of support and donations. Others sent angry letters, calling Marcus a fool or worse. But Marcus didn't care about strangers' opinions. He cared about his family. What mattered more were the changes happening in the colony itself. A week after the adoption, a Rigelian couple approached Marcus at the spaceport. They'd heard his story and wanted advice. They'd been caring for an orphaned human child they'd found, but were afraid to make it official. Marcus spent an hour talking with them, sharing what he'd learned about the process. 2 weeks later, that Rigelian couple filed for adoption. A month after that, 3 more cross-species adoption applications were filed, then 5 more, then a dozen. Mrs. Chen organized a community meeting about the growing number of homeless children in the colony, regardless of species. The meeting was packed. By the end, they'd founded an organization called Webb's Table, dedicated to feeding and helping orphaned juveniles of all species. Marcus was asked to be the spokesperson, but he refused. "I'm just a cargo loader," he told them. "Get someone who knows what they're doing." But he did volunteer at Webb's Table every weekend, bringing Zik, Zara, and Lily with him. The twins were especially good at connecting with other Velcori children, showing them that someone cared. At home, life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings were chaos, with 3 kids needing breakfast and getting ready for school. Marcus had to learn about Velcori dietary needs, which was harder than he expected. He burned more meals than he cared to admit, but the kids never complained. Zik and Zara excelled at school. Their natural mathematical abilities caught the attention of a teacher who specialized in advanced sciences. Within months, they were taking classes designed for students twice their age. Scholarship offers started arriving from prestigious academies off-world. But when Marcus sat down with the twins to discuss their options, they surprised him. "We want to stay on New Terra," Zeke said firmly. "We want to help build Webb's Table. Other kids need what you gave us." "You gave us life," Zara added. "Now we want to give others hope." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. These kids had every reason to be bitter and selfish after what they'd been through. Instead, they wanted to help others. "Are you sure?" he asked. "These academies could give you amazing opportunities." "We'll have opportunities here too," Zik said. "And we'll have family. That's more important." The colony continued to change. The segregated districts started mixing more. Humans, Velcori, Rigelians, and others began interacting in ways they never had before. The story of Marcus Webb had reminded everyone of something simple. Kindness matters more than species. Webb's Table grew from a small weekend operation to a full organization with permanent staff and funding. They opened a shelter for homeless juveniles, offering not just food, but education and job training. Within a year, the number of children living on the streets dropped by 70%. Other colonies heard about New Terra's success and started similar programs. The movement spread across multiple worlds, all because one human had refused to walk past 2 hungry kids. 5 years passed. Marcus still worked at the spaceport, though he'd been promoted to supervisor. He finally had enough income to move his family to a bigger apartment. But he kept the old place for a while, using it as part of Webb's Table's emergency housing. Zik and Zara were now teenagers, at least by Velcori standards. They'd grown taller, their shells harder and gleaming with health. They'd become local celebrities, often invited to speak at schools about their experience. They always credited Marcus, though they'd learned to call him Dad in private. Lily was in high school, studying xenosociology. She'd decided she wanted to work in cross-species relations, helping other families like hers navigate the complex systems. She wore a small pin every day that said "Family is Choice" in 4 different languages. Marcus's story reached the Galactic Senate. A representative from Earth proposed a new initiative called the Web Protocol, designed to simplify and encourage cross-species fostering across all member worlds. The bureaucracy that had nearly destroyed Marcus's adoption would be reformed, making it easier for others to follow his path. The Senate invited Marcus to speak at the formal proposal hearing. It would mean traveling to the galactic capital, a huge honor, but Marcus almost declined. He didn't like attention, and he certainly didn't think of himself as anyone special. Zik, Zara, and Lily convinced him to go. "Dad, what you did matters," Lily said. "You showed everyone that being different doesn't mean being separate. People need to hear that." So Marcus went. The Senate chambers were enormous, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Marcus stood at a podium, looking out at more power and influence than he'd ever seen in his life. He felt very small and very ordinary. He cleared his throat and began to speak. "I'm not good at speeches," Marcus said honestly. "I'm just a cargo loader from a small colony, but I've been asked to talk about family, about adoption, about what I did, and the truth is I didn't do anything special. I just saw 2 kids who needed help, and I helped them. That's it." He paused, looking at the faces watching him. Some looked bored, some interested, some skeptical. "People keep calling me brave or exceptional," Marcus continued. "But I'm not. I'm average. I'm ordinary. And that's actually my point. If someone as ordinary as me can make a difference, then anyone can. Every single person in this chamber, on every world you represent, has the power to see someone in need and choose to help. That's not special. That's just being decent." Marcus looked up at Zik, Zara, and Lily sitting in the gallery. They smiled at him, his children, his family. "The Web Protocol isn't about me," Marcus said. "It's about making it easier for people to do what's right. It's about breaking down the walls we've built between species and remembering that we're all just people trying to survive in this galaxy. Some of us look different. Some of us have shells or scales or fur or skin. But underneath, we all want the same things: safety, love, family, belonging." His voice grew stronger. "I adopted Zeke and Zara because they were hungry children and I had food, because they were alone and I could be there for them, because it was the right thing to do. And you know what I learned? Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Those 2 kids saved me as much as I saved them. They gave me purpose when I was drowning in grief. They reminded me why life matters." Marcus looked directly at the Senate members. "So please, pass this protocol. Make it easier for others to build families like mine, because the galaxy needs more of this, more connection, more compassion, more proof that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. That's what humans believe. That's what I believe, and I think deep down you all believe it too." He stepped away from the podium. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then applause began, slowly at first, then building until it filled the massive room. The Web Protocol passed by an overwhelming majority. 10 years after Marcus first met Zik and Zara behind those dumpsters, he sat in his living room reading the latest report on the protocol's impact. Over 47,000 cross-species adoptions had been completed across the galaxy. Thousands of children who would have grown up alone now had families. Zik and Zara, now young adults, had become xenopsychologists specializing in cross-species family dynamics. They traveled the galaxy helping other families, always returning home to New Terra between assignments. Lily had graduated with honors and now worked for the Galactic Family Services, the same organization that had almost destroyed their family. She was reforming it from the inside, making it more compassionate, more understanding. Marcus was older now, grayer, with more wrinkles around his eyes. But he was happy. His small apartment was filled with pictures of 3 kids growing up together. Human and Velcori, different but united. Someone knocked on the door. Marcus opened it to find a young human woman holding the hand of a small Rigelian child. She looked nervous. "Are you Marcus Webb?" she asked. "Yes," Marcus said gently. I found this child 3 days ago. She was abandoned. I've been caring for her, but I don't know what to do. Everyone says I'm crazy to even consider." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. Marcus smiled. He'd had this conversation dozens of times over the years. People seeking advice, seeking permission, seeking courage. "Come in," he said. "Let me tell you a story about 2 kids who once asked me if they could eat my leftovers, and how that simple question changed everything." As the young woman and child entered his home, Marcus glanced at the photo on his wall. Sarah smiled back at him from the picture, holding baby Lily. He could almost hear her voice. "That's my Marcus. Still making a difference?" "Yeah," Marcus whispered to the photo. "One kid at a time." Outside, New Terra's twin suns set on another day. And somewhere in the colony, another person was making the choice to help, another family was forming, another life was changing, all because one ordinary human had looked at 2 starving children and decided that being different wasn't a reason to walk away. It was a reason to stay.